Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be covering the first round of the Fide Candidates tournament held at the Cape Cap St. George's Resort in Peja, Cyprus. And we will have four games from the open section and four from the women's section in round one. So we're going to start with this game, the blockbuster matchup between Fabian Caruana and Hikaru Nakamura. The battle of the top two seeded Americans, starting off with knight f3 from Fabiano with the white pieces. Hikaru responds with d5 and Fabiano Caruana plays the red d. This is an interesting line. You could push d4 here. You could go e6, which was played in the game. Or you could even take here, but not considered to be a good line these days. He goes for a classic structure and then goes for this d4 push into the position, kind of clogging the center. Bishop g2, knight c6, castles, bishop c5, e3, not e4, e3, and now Hikaru is going to play knight g e7. You can't really take here because f takes a3 and then d4, and white has a very good position. So knight g7, and from here then there are multiple ways to play this. You could take here, which just played in the game, or you could play this sacrifice out here, b4, take, not taking here, but you need to play so then knight is b4 and this sequence. Knight c3. So after knight d4, we saw takes, b4, takes, and castles. You could not take this pawn before because of this check. Knight c6 would result in the bishop coming in and taking this. And you might think you have a rook here, but after the move knight c3 and bishop b2 is coming and your queen is just trapped in the corner. So after knight takes d4, we saw this exchange and castles was played and queen b3, bishop a5 and knight c3. Now you can take this pawn actually. After which white has some counter play with this move queen a3, bishop a3. It's a very interesting opening idea from Fabiano Caruana here. We saw knight a5, bishop a3 and d5 push into the center. Knight d4, queen a4 and b6. So white is in a decent position. So is black. It's very even, as you can see on the evaluation bar. And rook e1 comes in, bishop d7, queen d2. But you will see Fabian Caruana spends 40 minutes for these two moves here and spends another 17 to retreat with the bishop to b2. And these are not bad moves, but just the amount of time is spent to play these moves is not something you can afford without an increment in this open section as well. You don't have increment. I want to mention this key idea here as well. After b6 you could take here, bishop takes e6, and you might think the rook is going, but in these positions for white with the bishop on g2, this is the heart and soul of this position. So after queen takes a2, there's an f3, bishop g4 or bishop h3, let's say bishop h3, knight d5 and c6. Just the amount of pieces where they should be attacking the king here is just too much for him. And even let's say if you can somehow remove this knight, knight e2 is checkmate. So a lot of threats here, so that's why he didn't go for it. c5, bishop b2, a4, a6, and when now we actually, after the knight naturally hops into d5, We saw take, and simplification of the position. So, like, when I was watching this game live, I felt like this might be the moment where this game heads into a draw. Oh boy, was I wrong. We saw bishop b4 being played. Now, seeing this, like, what's the path forward for white? If he really wants to win this game, he should play the move h4 and move forward as you saw in the game. So, how do you negate that as black? You play g6, queen f3, rook e7. So, let's say something like d3 is played and king g7. And when they play h4, we can meet with h5, mirroring the pawn structure here, and now it's a very easy hold for Hikaru. But he does not do that. He tries to lock up this queen side first with this idea, bishop c5, which is a mistake, and now he misses that. After h5, the rook can even swing from here into active areas, and this is where everything starts going wrong for him. Bishop c6, rook e1, and Fabi no, Caruana is clinical. Not actually after the game, but so far so good for him. He's slowly, methodically using all the threats in his position which he has. You could use this threat. There's always a threat on f7. It's such a easy position to play. But how do you break through? Hikaru has been defending very well. This is how you break through. You sacrifice the rook temporarily because of bishop d5. You're not losing the queen because of rook e6, but king g4, queen g4, and now you're just a simple pawn down, and the king is also weak. So this should be a very routine win for Fabiano, but he misses something in this complex situation. King e4, king e7, these are misses, but um in this position, you should just play king e6, um and let's say you go queen g8, king e7, queen e6, king d8. But now you can play f4, and after like the bishop retreats, you can go queen g8 and gobble up the pawn on g7. So this position is just very commanding, but he plays f4 like this. It's still very winning, but he misses something here with this. After king f3, there's this queen e7 idea, and now let's say you want to avoid the trade here. Let's say you just want to play anything other than that. You want to play this. The thing is, the queen comes in here and checks you to your demise. You're just going to be the draw. So queen e4, you have to trade. You can't lock the position like this. You could, but it's very complicated. So he decides to keep a majority, a 4v2 majority on the king side, while having a 3v2 minority here, but everything is locked here. So there's not a lot of progress that can be made. He plays f5, not the emotionally move, king d7. Um, he should have played g5 here, which is a wonderful sacrifice. It should have been a brilliant king d5, and then you go h6. Let's say they play g4. We sacrifice another pawn here. Well, obviously this is an engine 9. And after playing 5 hours of classical chess, I don't think it's very easy to see something like this being played. So king d5 was played and f6 played here, and now e6, and now is the critical juncture of this game. King e7 was played. This move loses the game, and actually this is not a good situation because king e7 actually the only good move holds the game. It holds the game because of e7, king e7. You can just come here and let's say they try to gobble up here. They can settle bishop f2 and bishop c5, and this position here, there's d3, king takes b6, d2, bishop c2, and this actually is just a draw because the queen side does not much progress and the king side is now officially locked. but he plays king e7, letting the king walk through, and he shortly resigns. What a wonderful game by Fabio Caruana, to take the lead, not a sole lead, but combined lead in the first round. We'll see, but perfect for him so far. So now the next game we're going to cover is Pragnanda versus Anish Giri. Pragnanda opened with e4 c5 is played by Anish Giri. This is the first round. Players usually try to settle in, but not these two. They're playing aggressive chess here. And Pragnanda goes for an offbeat variation. He goes for the pre-attack here. Very common opening at the intermediate and like higher, lower advanced level. A4 is played here, bishop c4, e6, d3, and this pawn sacrifice is played f5, breaking the position up. Takes and queen e1, bishop e6, takes, and the material is equal. Queen d7 is played. An exchange would not be good at all for him. Actually, black would be slightly better here, so he just drops back to c4, and we see opposite side castling. Bishop g5. He no, I mean this game so far he's been looking to trade a lot of pieces initially, but he's just not been able to. And Pragnanda is just not obliging in all of these trades. He slowly gets this advantage and this endgame, which he effortlessly converts. It's, be careful not to get knight trapped here in the corner. That's why he plays this wonderful move h4, saving his knight, because otherwise rook h5 and this knight is actually trapped. So he recovers his knight and Giri heads for the rook endgame, um, which is like his best chance here because the other endgame is just fully winning. So and rook endgames are always very tricky. So and drawish, but Prananda converts this one effortlessly and wins his game in a beautiful way with 98% accuracy. So now we have the third game, Matthias Blumam versus Wei. We have Matthias Blumam with the white pieces. Both grandmasters are just very solid players. Matthias Blumam, the underdog, going to this tournament. Wei just won the Tata Shield. And we get a Queen's Gambit decline, Knight c3, normal opening, and the semi Tarash from Wei. We exchange quickly. This is probably the calmest game yet because both sides basically played perfect chess, in my opinion. We saw trades galore and take, and queen d7, a rook sacrifice for the draw, and Bluma actually obliges. Um, you could continue with rook e6, but this position is very equal, but they decide to just go for the draw here, setting into the tournament. Not a bad result for either of them. Now we have okay, Sindarov, the young Uzbek prodigy, versus Andrei Shevchenko. Sindarov with the white pieces d4 d5, and we see another Queen's Gambit decline. We went for the c5 line here, but bishop e7 was played. Takes, bishop f4, e3 c5, and bishop d3. It's almost like a London system, but there's no pyramid, and knight is not on d2, it's on c3. c4 is played by Sipenko, and knight h5, bishop e5, f6, and we see a very imbalanced position here. If a knight, like White's plan should be trying to get a knight on f4, trying to put the pressure on, which he does actually get in exchange for the strong h5 knight as well, which is not something you see usually. The knights on that area are very dumb, and as most top grandmasters say, but after a6 is positioned, is just blocked away for white, and black is doing very well. But here, after a4 and trying to get some openings, he rushes into this trade, which he shouldn't have done. He should have played something like rook e8, which is the top engine line here, but he rushes in and makes another mistake, allows the rook to come in into rook a6, has to sacrifice here, and now after queen c6 takes and bishop a4, queen c5. There's still somehow threats on f2, but he can just calmly convert here, queen g6 and rook e8 takes, and I also found this move on the broadcast. I was very proud of this one because I played the same move as a grandmaster. Um, Not here, but after bishop d7, queen e8, queen g8, there was rook e6 to win the game here. And I love this move because after takes, king f8 leads to this, and king h8 leads to queen e6, king h7, king h8, play around with him, and finish him at g8. And otherwise, this rook is sweeping into the e8 position, back rank problems for him, and this position is dead lost. So Senderov win a wonderful win there, and that is all of those are all of our games from the open section. Now we move over to the women's section. I think this is my first time covering women's chess on this channel as well, so that's been fun. Zhu Jina versus Tan Zhongyi, the all Chinese derby. Zhu Jina is the, I think she's the highest or second highest rated in this field. Um, but I don't think she was a major title. I think she might have qualified on her rating alone. E4, E5, Knight F3, Knight C6, and the Italian played by Zhu Jina. Knight F3 and D3, just a very solid choice. She doesn't go for the fried liver. Castles, and Knight C3. She could have played C3 for even slower game, but we see A4, Knight A5, Bishop A2, dropping back, and C5. Expanding on this side, Bishop G5 takes, Knight D5, and C3 played here. All three of these pawns placed wonderfully to negate this movement and build a pawn chain here. This knight is also a very key knight for Zhu Jina, and this is a wonderful sacrifice. If you take, which you shouldn't, we can just take back and knight comes into f6. This bishop on a2 looking like a sleeper, but now waking up, and there's just so much pressure on this position if she takes. So she just denies it. 93. She has a very good position, Zhu Jina here, but after f5, takes. She should be like +1 according to the engine. G4, trapping in the corner, but h3 is a big miss. She should have just took it straight away according to the engine. h3 is played, and this allows for bishop g6, which kind of, because we already saw a sacrifice here, so that kind of equalizes this position, and now everything is neutralized. And like, even if anyone is pressing here, it might be black, but she managed to scrape away with a draw. Now, from one derby to another, we have an Eastern European derby here between Katerina Lagno and Alexandra Goryachkina. Goryachkina with the white pieces plays e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and we see a Roy Lopez very principled opening from Goryachkina. a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castle c, bishop e7, d3 is played. So the open like this, the classical variations of the Royal Lopez arise from this position, and from here black can play knight a5, knight b8, rook e8, b5, b5, bishop b7. There's just a lot of options here, but she goes for this like a anti-Berlin, anti-Marshall type setup. She doesn't want the position to open that much. Goes knight c3, a3, hops on the knight, trades in, and like has a very balanced position. The queen on d5 is doing very well, so she looks to kick her out. And rook d8 is a mistake from Katarina because of queen c2 and d4 striking, knight g6, rook c6, and here we saw takes, which is a miss. This game, even though it's still an advantage after what we saw in the game, is winning on the spot for Alexandra Goryachkina with this rook sacrifice here. If you take, you go bishop takes e6, e5, and just go bishop c5. Take this, you got two pieces for the rook, and this is just way better and winning for Goryachkina actually. She still has an advantage, but that is quickly just neutralized by Katerina Lagno slowly but surely, and not much left in this rook game. You could say she could have tried, but Katrina holds with great discipline, and this game will eventually just end up in a draw. So now we have Divya Deshmukh versus Anna Muzicuk, the Ukrainian last minute entry because Hampi Koneru pulled out of the candidates here. Um, and this was a very even game, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. The Scotch played by Divya, the Schmidt variation. This is all theory. Choose to go for this fleeing Keto setup, c4, trying to kick out knight, but a proactive move from Anna Muzicuk, prophylactic, b5, b3, bishop b2, bishop h3, and she chose to exchange the queens early, and both of them, there's a decent chance here for her, Divya Deshmukh, but this endgame is just well neutralized by Anna Muzichuk, and both of the players agree to a draw with 3 full repetition. Now, the final game on the day is last but not the least, Vaishali Ramesh Babu against Baby Sara Asobaeva. Um, Vaishali with the white pieces plays e4. Why is something interesting of note? The time control in the women's section is different from the open. Women's section has 90 plus 30 and then 30 minutes of increment. The open section has 2 hours with no increment until the 40 move mark, where you get half an hour plus the increment. So we get a fun Sicilian here, the Löwenthal, Kalashnikov, played by Bibisara. And knight b5 is the traditional like way to play this opening. Knight b5, d6, Sveshnikov. It's very like old school opening actually. I've not seen it a lot in modern chess. Would have been fun to see it, but knight e2 very negative like move in my opinion. I don't like it a lot. Bishop c5, knight g3. She recalibrates d6, knight a4. She's been pushing around with her knights, the castles, queen d3, and this position is everything relies on the break at d5. Black can control here. Then she could just steamroll this position. She could absolutely dominate here if allowed to continue like that. Rook d1, bishop e3, rook b8, knight b2, and a3, knight g4 takes, and actually after bishop e6 and f5, Wonderful fighting chess by baby Sarah, who's got a slight advantage here. Takes 6, rook c6. That's kind of a weird move because the piece gets sometimes stuck here, and so these variations could be a liability. But in this time scramble where Vaishali has like little to no time left, she barely survives in the position. Baby Sarah lets her off. Queen takes e6. Basically just drawing, and f4. This a pawn is obviously not good enough. Bishop b2, and we've seen the final draw. So 4 out of 4 draws in the women's section the first day, but still a lot of fighting chess. But 3 decisive results, all 3 of them in white, in the open section, which is really heating up after this first set of games. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you like, share, and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.